All right, welcome everyone. Today's special broadcast. We're going to do something a little bit different today. Just to be clear, we actually had different class schedules, but we had a last minute cancellation, and so I was so fortunate. I'd been already dialoguing with Jamie Davies now for a couple of weeks, and Jamie reached out to me on X and introduced himself, his work, some of the films that he's done, and some films that are not yet public but will be soon. A three-part trilogy, which I was privileged to be granted access to watch these films, and everyone here today is going to be able to watch. We're going to be watching it's like a little screening, a teaser of the second of the trilogy of films, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to listen to Jamie also go through his process, his research, what sort of connections he's made, and how to apply this understanding, this better appreciation of I want to say history, but this it's there's a battle over ideas, over what the future will be, what is human beings, what is our nature, what is the nature of the universe, and not everyone is in agreement of what those are. There are some very toxic ideas, some very toxic hypotheses about the nature of what is humanity, why is humanity, who must rule over humanity, are we capable of ruling over ourselves, which unfortunately have risen in influence, especially amongst Western civilization over the last century and a half or so. So we're going to see, and Jamie has done some fantastic work in his research, which really impressed me, and luckily when I asked him, hey, do you want to do this little screening and chat on a Sunday? He agreed. I was so happy that he did so. And so we're gonna get to after hearing Jamie speak a little bit, we're gonna watch the film. We're gonna open up for some dialogue about some of the theosophical undercurrents shaping a lot of the technocratic institutions that have been plaguing humanity now for well over 70, 80 years. Jamie, thank you for doing this. What would you like people to have in mind before they plunge into the screening of your episode 2 that we're going to watch today?
Well, I think the story is quite unique because it's a biographical piece. The first film I did was charting Maurice Strong's life, which, Matt, a lot of your work laid the foundation for that story. So I'd like to thank you. I found your work on the Canadian Patriot during the research phase of the project, which was a few years ago. So the second film is another biographical piece about Maurice Strong's wife. So I think it's a rare story because we don't get to see, excuse me, many many kind of insights into this world. It's a shadowy world, isn't it? And I think Maurice was quite a public figure, spokesperson for that world. And also Hannah Strong, his wife, is quite public also. So it's a rare glimpse into that world, which I think hopefully will make it accessible to people who are trying to make sense of the world. And in this, it was my search for understanding the ideological roots of globalism, trying to kind of work out where it fits, that I really kind of found this story quite useful, I think.
Great. All right. Yeah, I think that'll set the stage very nicely. And the official title you said you're going with is Politics of Belief, right?
Yeah, yeah. A lot of the kind of my early interest in this world was psychological warfare. I had a documentary I was making about an anarchist group, and one guy was it was an attempted assassination by MI5, is what the newspapers called it, and that was my kind of journey into investigative filmmaking. And from researching the footage I had from him, led me onto this journey of really understanding the wider picture. So it was it's been quite a journey for me, and quite a serious one. So it's been quite a serious focus for about 10 years now. And this is my synopsis, I suppose. Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, it shows. Let's just screen. It's about 25 minutes, and then we'll open up for some dialogue. So here is Politics of Belief Part 2.
We explore how progressive politics became the sacred worldview of our time.
Fucking a white male!
How dare you!
Once you see this, you'll understand what's really happening. Why the borders are open, why the genders are changing, and why the old truths can no longer be spoken. This isn't a conspiracy, but a cultural engineering project, funded by foundations spread through universities and embedded in global governance.
And before long, it's going to be uncontrollable. It's going to be too late.
It emerged from a fusion of ideologies, a vision of global socialism merged with a New Age mysticism called Theosophy, and was institutionalized through the United Nations.
Now, just what is the New Age movement?
Well, the New Age movement is a network, and it operates on a network principle. In fact, sociologists have given it a tag called SPIN, or Segmented Polycentric Integrated Networks.
On a local Christian TV station, she said something disturbing, that the United Nations ideology and the Nazi Party were built on the same spiritual foundations. Both had drawn from the same esoteric doctrine, Theosophy.
He spent 6 hours poring over the materials and came back looking extremely ashen-faced and said, "You're absolutely right, this is Nazism beyond any shadow of a doubt. I don't know how I or anybody else ever missed it."
That too is very evocative. But what sort of civilizational forms do you see coming to an end or being unable to sustain themselves?
All forms that are based on images of inappropriate separateness and divisiveness, which are grounded on a postulation of non-connectedness between human beings and the rest of the earth, or certain segments of humanity and other segments of humanity.
In our last film, we introduced Maurice Strong, the man responsible for the term sustainable development. His land project in Crestone, Colorado, with his wife Hannah, became a spiritual hub for global elites and New Age leaders. To some, it was utopian. To others, it was proof of his deeper ideological agenda. He was accused of using environmentalism as a means to reshape global governance. Today, his legacy lives on in the form of the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals, a blueprint for transforming every aspect of human life, from food to gender, work to education, and even belief. He organized the 1972 UN Conference on the Human Environment in Stockholm, the first major global summit on the environment. He founded the United Nations Environment Programme, UNEP. He chaired the 1992 Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, where he helped launch Agenda 21. He served as a trustee of the Rockefeller Foundation and a board member of the World Economic Forum. He introduced the idea that environmental issues were a matter of global security. He believed that only a world government could solve ecological crisis.
If it is true that the environment is a global issue, if it is true that we are faced with the need of managing our global society as a physical whole, it is surely also true that we must learn to manage it as an economic and social whole.
Much of the criticism laid at Maurice Strong with his wife Hannah surrounded his Barker Ranch New Age retreat. In the high deserts of Colorado, he built a spiritual sanctuary called Crestone. It was meant to be a utopia, where monks, mystics, and billionaires could imagine a new world. But behind the temples and wind chimes, critics saw something darker, a cult of the elite, blending mysticism with global control. They said Strong wasn't saving the planet. He was building a new religion, one that would quietly replace the old, all under the guise of saving humanity from itself. Hannah Strong was mystically greeted by a prophet who told her she'd come to fulfill a vision, to gather all the world's religions in one sacred place. At Barker Ranch, she built a spiritual refuge, envisioned as the Vatican of the New World Order, for the coming age of global transformation.
This valley also is a place of origins of humanity. So, I mean, it's like I was confirmed that I knew this place already. I'd been here before in the very early days when humanity first originated here. So it's like my soul came home.
Soon after moving in, an 80-year-old prophet named Glenn Anderson arrived at her door declaring, "I've been waiting for you." He revealed visions of the valley as a sacred refuge, a future sanctuary where all the world's spiritual traditions would be preserved through an impending doomsday. Honor fasted in the mountains and received confirmation. The land was sacred, a center of healing and evolution. Her mission had begun.
That the purpose of this place is to bring forth a new civilization of people that are evolved, good-hearted, illuminated.
I started investigating, and my investigation led me into occult bookstores, which I'd never been into before, because this realm of investigation led me straight into the occult, which is what this movement is. It's occultic-based, mystical-based, and it has infiltrated every segment of our society, and unfortunately most Christians are blissfully unaware. It would be coming from the Eastern religions and occultic sources. It's known as the Age of Aquarius, or the Aquarian Conspiracy, or the Human Potential Movement. There are other names, but those are the most important. So I held up my copy of the Aquarian Gospel, and I said, "Mary, is this by any chance part of it?" And she said, "Why, yes, it is. That's very perceptive of you." And then she relaxed discernibly. And I said, "What do you do in the movement?" She said, "We communicate with code words and signals." I said, "Holistic." And she almost flew off her chair. She said, "Why, yes, that's it." I said, "Spaceship Earth." "Yes." "Global village." "Yes." "Small planet." "Yes." "Crowded planet." "Yes." "Paradigm," "interdependence," "transformation," "discipling," and she told me quite a few more. I said, "Well, what do you communicate about?" And she said, "We believe the mind operates on principles just as your body operates on principles. And if you want your mind to work efficiently for you, you'd better know the principles." I said, "Well, that sure sounds logical to me. What are some of the principles?" And she said, "And the most important principle of all is karma." Well, I had noticed running through all these books a discernible trend towards Easternization of our religions. So I said, "Karma? Mary, could this conceivably have anything at all to do with Eastern religions?" And she said, "Well, yes, Eastern religions are part of it, but we're much bigger than the Eastern religions."
Eastern religions, another clue in the mysterious puzzle, led her down some sinister paths.
Especially amongst the Republicans, that are into, Christianity and fundamentalist Christianity. You had a Secretary of the Interior actually say publicly, "We might as well take all the resources out of the earth because Armageddon is right around the corner. It's going to happen anyway, so we might as well take it." So if with a mentality like that, what chances do you have? Not much.
What are known as the old mystery traditions, or the old mystery teachings, and these groups say they're working actively for the restoration of the mysteries. And its modern roots can be traced from approximately 1875. That's when Helena Petrovna Blavatsky founded the Theosophical Society under the direction of the so-called masters.
Helena Petrovna Blavatsky, born in 1831, was a Russian mystic and co-founder of the Theosophical Society, often called the Mother of the New Age. In 1888, Madame Blavatsky claimed to have traveled to Tibet and there to have been initiated into the secrets of spiritual masters she calls the hidden elect. In the doctrines of occultists, the hidden elect or the Great White Brotherhood are believed to be humans who by initiation and self-denial have risen to become adepts.
They have gained powers and knowledge beyond those of ordinary mortals. Drawing on Eastern and Western esoteric traditions, she claimed access to hidden knowledge from spiritual masters. Her influential works laid the foundation for modern occultism and profoundly shaped the New Age movement. She taught that all religions share a common truth. Humanity evolves through spiritual cycles, and that karma and reincarnation govern our lives. Her goal was to awaken humanity to its divine origin and cosmic destiny. Many ideas we now take for granted, karma, reincarnation, chakras, the age of Aquarius, were seeded by her. Blavatsky's vision of hidden masters and cosmic evolution still haunts the dreams of the modern world. In the 1940s, Theosophical visionary and creator of Lucifer Publishing, Alice Bailey, successor to Blavatsky, had already begun to influence the culture around the UN. She spoke of a new world order, of an age of group consciousness, of spiritual evolution. Her writings, published through Lucis Trust, an organization with official consultative status at the UN, were read by officials, educators and policymakers. Because Theosophy taught that humanity is evolving, not just spiritually, but socially and biologically. That nations, borders, and even gender itself are temporary illusions, obstacles to be transcended. In this worldview, traditional identities must dissolve to make way for a new kind of global consciousness. They believed humanity was evolving, not just biologically, but spiritually, toward a single, unified consciousness, and that behind the chaos of the world was a hidden plan. Today, their vision echoes in the language of climate emergency, in policies that see the Earth as a living being in need of healing, in diversity quotas and racial equity drives that treat humanity as one organism balancing its parts. Even in the UN's 17 Sustainable Goals, the dream of a world without borders, governed not by nations, but by enlightened ideals. Amid the devastation of World War II, out of the rubble of cities and millions dead, hope was born in the form of the United Nations. It was the most ambitious attempt in human history to unite nations under one vision, a world without war. 50 countries came together to build a framework for peace, law and global cooperation on a scale never seen before. They said the United Nations was built to prevent another war, but its foundations had been laid decades earlier. In Britain, H.G. Wells, Fabian socialist, futurist and architect of modern utopias, wrote The Open Conspiracy Blueprint for a World Revolution. He imagined a new world managed not by parliaments but by planners, a rational elite reshaping humanity through global cooperation. But to Alice Bailey, Wells was more than a reformer, he was a forerunner. In books like The Externalization of the Hierarchy, The Destiny of the Nations and The Reappearance of the Christ, Bailey outlined a one-world order governed not just by policy, but by spiritual law. She saw global institutions as vehicles for higher purpose, guided by what she called the plan. What emerged in the 17 Sustainable Development Goals is the quiet union of these two visions, international socialism and esoteric evolution. A world without poverty, war, inequality, engineered by design and aligned by spirit. It was not just a strategy, it was a metamorphosis. They said the 17 goals were just about progress, ending poverty, cleaning up the planet, building a fairer world. But taken together, they revealed something deeper, a quiet attempt to redesign the human story. At their core was the belief that our biggest problems, war, inequality, ecological collapse, come from the illusion that we are separate. Separate by race, by gender, by nation, by class. The goals suggest another path, one where interconnectedness becomes the foundation, where education teaches unity, economics serves the whole, and no one is left behind, not out of charity, but because conflict disappears when division does. It is not just about sustainability. It is about removing the reasons we fight in the first place. A world where the boundaries between us dissolve, not with force, but through design. At the dawn of the United Nations, Eleanor Roosevelt stood in San Francisco and read the Theosophical Great Invocation, a spiritual call for light, love and purpose to guide humanity.
Let light and love and hope restore the track on earth.
An influential American dynasty, the Rockefeller family helped shape the modern world. They donated the land on which the United Nations now stands, prime Manhattan real estate valued at $8.5 million in 1946. This bold act signaled their global vision. Known as America's royal family, the Rockefellers built not only an empire of oil and finance, but a legacy of power, philanthropy and quiet control that still echoes through the halls of world institutions. The power of the Rockefeller dynasty didn't end with oil, it evolved. Today, their influence still pulses through a network of global institutions they helped create or fund. The Council on Foreign Relations, a key think tank shaping US foreign policy, was born from their vision. So was the Trilateral Commission, designed to coordinate elite governance across America, Europe and Japan. The United Nations, built on land they donated, was just the beginning, a symbol of a wider ambition to architect a new world order through soft power, philanthropy and strategic alliances. Their foundations continue to guide health, education, agriculture and climate agendas worldwide. Quiet, vast and enduring, Rockefeller power is no longer loud, but it is everywhere. In 1968, the Rockefellers quietly backed a new group of thinkers in a villa outside Rome. They called themselves the Club of Rome. Their idea was radical for the time, that the real threat to humanity wasn't war, it was growth itself. Using computers, then still a mystical technology, they created a model. And in 1972, it delivered a prophecy, limits to growth. A vision of collapse caused not by politics, but by progress. What terrified them was something new, not chaos, but systems collapsing under their own weight. The model said that the modern world, with its consumption, population and industry, would hit a wall, not tomorrow, but soon.
So resources still run down slowly. Industry can expand. Pollution, now controlled, doesn't become a problem. Growth is progressing. But this time the population grows so large that food becomes a problem. Food production cannot keep pace with population. People starve. And industrial society collapses.
This was the invention of doom forecasting, where computer models replaced prophets and graphs replaced gods. It was no longer about imagining a better world, but predicting the moment it would end.
What we're really being told is that although nobody knows for sure exactly when it will happen or exactly what risk is the greatest risk man faces, scientists are fairly unanimous in saying that man does face extremely important risks.
When global population is doubling every 33 years, when resource consumption is doubling every 20 years, no long-term view of mankind can proceed without first forming some preliminary answers to these questions.
Professor Dennis Meadows, at a conference in Washington to mark the publication of his team study for the Club of Rome, The Limits to Growth. It concludes that economic growth always generates a crisis, that the road to riches is the road to disaster.
This was also the beginning of technocracy, a world managed by data, not debate. Limits to Growth gave the United Nations a new kind of authority, academic, scientific and unquestionable. But the computer was wrong. It predicted oil would run out by 1992 and population would collapse by 2010. None of it happened, yet the myth remained, because what mattered wasn't accuracy, it was control. A vision of the future run not by people but by machines, experts and algorithms.
It's not some science fantasy effect from 2001. This electronic display, emanating from Australia's largest computer, is a picture of the condition, past, present and future of planet Earth. The program was originally devised by a scientist working from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, J. Forrester. It was developed under the auspices of the Club of Rome by an MIT research team to present a complex model of the world and what we humans are doing to it. The program, called World One, doesn't pretend to be a precise forecast. What it does for the first time in man's history on the planet is to look at the world as one system. It shows that Earth cannot sustain present population and industrial growth for much more than a few decades. It shows that simply cleaning up our car exhausts and making some small effort to limit our families simply isn't enough. It's like an electronic guided tour of our global behaviour since 1900 and where that behaviour will lead us. There's a system where all these things are interrelated, and yet the government, the control of the system is by individual nation states. Now, how do you convince them to cooperate?
The sovereignty of these nations is no longer as absolute as it was. There's a gradual diminishing, whittling away of sovereignty, little bit by little bit.
The Club of Rome was soon criticised as a neo-Malthusian cult, dressing old anxieties in new data. Their warnings about collapse quietly birthed a new obsession: population control. Suddenly, academics, billionaires and policymakers began to speak in cold, rational tones about reducing birth rates, as if managing people was no different than managing carbon. Population became the problem, and fewer people became the solution. This logic persists to this day, quietly guiding the technocratic elite, who still believe that saving the planet means managing the human herd.
Reason that Lawrence Rockefeller spent $6 million here because he was convinced that this would help change the paradigm of this country.
He was drawn to the edges of culture,
America's most powerful
to the dreamers,
family,
mystics,
American
and visionaries
aristocracy.
reimagining what America could become.
They are the Rockefellers.
He funded New Age thinkers and consciousness researchers, quietly supporting an attempt to birth a new paradigm, one that saw evolution not in industry or empire, but in the transformation of human consciousness. Lawrence Rockefeller, heir to the Rockefeller fortune, quietly funded the New Age movement through grants to figures like John Mack, Stephen Greer, Barbara Marx Hubbard, Dennis McKenna, and Ralph Metzner. He backed psychedelic research, alien abduction studies and consciousness expansion projects via the Fund for the Enhancement of the Human Spirit and the Green Earth Foundation. His goal, to guide human evolution spiritually, merging science, mysticism and ecology into a planetary vision. His influence shaped the architecture of the modern New Age. He moved among the luminaries of the New Age movement, funding figures like Terence McKenna, who spoke of time waves and machine elves, Rupert Sheldrake with his theory of morphic resonance, and Stanislav Grof, who mapped inner worlds through LSD and holotropic breathwork. He was involved with the Alan Watts Circle and supported mythologist Joseph Campbell. Lawrence Rockefeller helped support Linda's Farm, a sanctuary for spiritual experimentation and environmental living. He poured money into psychedelic research when it was still taboo, backing studies through the Hefter Research Institute, the Green Earth Foundation, and funding institutions like the California Institute for Integral Studies, ESALIN, and the Lindisfarne Association. He was the single largest benefactor of CIIS, providing a $5 million grant through his Fund for the Enhancement of the Human Spirit. He also supported the San Francisco Zen Center, the Crestone Mountain Zen Center, and S. Island's Revisioning Philosophy program. His interests extended to parapsychology and anomalous science. He funded Princeton's Pear Lab and various consciousness research conferences. And he went even further. Fascinated by the unknown, he became a major player in the world of UFO research and disclosure. He supported Harvard professor John Mack's controversial studies on alien abduction, even funding his legal defense. He financed the Starlight Coalition, backed Stephen Greer's early Sea SETI programs, and was said to be a central figure in manufacturing the public mythology of Roswell and crop circles. He hosted UFO conferences at his JY Ranch in Wyoming, bringing together researchers like Linda Moulton Howe, Don Berliner, and Mack himself. He was also linked to Colonel John Alexander's early psi research and spoon-bending circles, and provided backing for Colin Andrews' crop circle work. He was the key figure behind the so-called Rockefeller Initiative during the Clinton presidency, pushing for UFO disclosure and the release of classified files. He funded the UFO briefing document, the best available evidence, which some claim was more myth-building than truth-seeking. He supported the Institute of Noetic Sciences, the Human Potential Foundation, and the Fund for UFO Research, many of which received parallel funding from Prince Hans Adam II of Liechtenstein, Robert Bigelow, and the Threshold Foundation. His efforts often converged with figures tied to intelligence and narrative management networks. To his critics, Lawrence Rockefeller was not simply a curious billionaire, but a psychological operator, a man whose financing of New Age movements, alien abductions, crop circles, and paranormal science blurred the line between consciousness expansion and controlled opposition. Through his vast wealth and influence, he shaped entire fields of thought, often straddling the line between spiritual awakening and strategic disinformation. In doing so, he left behind a legacy as enigmatic as the phenomena he pursued.
Okay, that was you. You used that 25 minutes very well, Joe.
It's pretty dense, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. But I mean, you got the core. The thing that a lot of people miss, they get. I think they lose the forest for the trees when they try to tackle this sort of topic. And you kept a hold of both by both appreciating the specific details of how this is manifested in the course of the last century, but also the philosophical underpinnings, the epistemological battle, where a lot of people just skip over the Club of Rome and the strange idea of oneness and getting over our differences. That's really at the heart of the sleight of hand that's pulling us in this really dystopic place. So let me ask you this: like, where is the story going for? Because I can see that you still have a little bit of work to do to I guess edit this a little bit more before you make it public. And what's the next phase of the story in part three? Do you want to say a few words about that?
Well, what I would say, the adjustments to what we've just watched is going to be more of a focus, less on the Rockefellers, and more of a focus on Hannah and this dialectic that we've got going with Constance Cumby, who was the Christian lawyer from Chicago who was talking at it. So really that kind of anti-Christian story is going to be kind of ever present in it. And really, I think it's Alice Bailey's view of a one world religion is what we were witnessing with Hannah Strong's story. So it's going to be very much focusing on that aspect to it. There's so much that she says in that interview where there's probably maybe a few more parts to be made. But this kind of manufacturing of consent into this kind of what I posit as the woke religion that was being created by this group. And that's kind of where it's going to focus, I think, next in the film, is the implications of this theosophical underpinning of what it does mean to people today who are engaged, as many of us are, in this kind of pervasive cult in many ways.
Mm-hmm. And you brought up the Esalen Institute. This is clearly like a central node of influence as far as managing the often ignored, people think of this stuff as quirky, new age things that are sort of, niche, but that's not true. This is actually like the as far as my research has taken me, as well as I get the sense of yours too, a real dominant religious engineering control and command center of the world. Could you say a little bit more about like the role of Esalen and what role Esalen's been playing into your research?
Not so. I haven't got so much to say about Esalen, but in terms of understanding the dynamics of theosophy, I kind of studied Buddhism quite a lot when I was younger. So I see a lot of, so theosophy is a synthesis of Buddhism, Hinduism, and Neoplatonism, I believe. So the Buddhism side really resonates. So I can see the kind of thinking quite clearly of what they were attempting. I don't even hold them in contempt or judgment, because I can understand the kind of rationale of what they were doing, but it is very much seems based in this kind of resurrection of the mysteries, of creating this kind of this perfect human, which is kind of the enlightened being, which Coca-Cola, in the kind of Coke advert that they did in the 70s, showed this kind of what Theosophy predicted as the next kind of coming race was this enlightened, illumined race, that what Hannah was talking about. And also, I've got more information from Lawrence Rockefeller in the idea of what they were trying to create, this neo-human. It's very Aryan, I would say, in the theosophical sense, not in the twisted Nazi sense, but that really gets us into kind of deeper territory, which I'm dying to get into with people who understand it, because it's a real deep one, I think.
Yeah.
In fact, the framing that it gave me, it kind of caused issues at the time, a kind of shock to the system to kind of view the world through this lens. Could it be what's motivating the change in populations and energy politics, particularly in the UK at the moment? It's really turning into an authoritarian, I guess, in Canada as well. It's becoming a technocratic system, and I think it's really important to try and understand the dynamics at play. And there's the cover up around the Aryan myth as well is really interesting. I think there's something around that that's worth discussing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. I mean, the irony that the so-called left, the new left, has been so influenced by this theosophical new age, light and life thing. That's clear. But then people often forget that no, the right, the perverse extreme right that emerged in Germany and in Italy and so much of the world, also, leading up to World War II, was also the outcome of theosophical cosmologies, and the fact that these are actually two sides of the same coin is typically also missed, but super important, right? That these sort of hippie types of Germany before World War One. I don't know if you've looked into the Wundervogel movement of Germany.
No.
Himmler and Goering, all of the top Nazi killers. They were, when they were young men and boys in 1907, 1908, 1909, were part of this Wundervogel movement of the wandering birds. It's basically like a proto hippie thing. You look at the propaganda, the literature promoting the Wundervogels, and it's basically doing orgies and drugs in the Black Forest and getting back to nature. And then to see, you wouldn't have guessed looking at them at the time that they would be the goose stepping hardcore, occult high command of this right wing fascist New Templar society just a few decades later. But there it was. So I don't know, it's when you say, one of the things I've noticed about the Theosophists and the different expressions of their movement is this, whether it's Maitreya or Ascended Masters or Christ consciousness, it all seems to have a nice outward language, but their meaning seems to be that a superhuman new race must be bred or created into being. What maybe you could say a little bit more about transhumanism and how that plays into or manifests somewhat of what Blavatsky was thinking about regarding the creation of this new super race or something like that.
Blavatsky and Alice Bailey, they talk about this kind of illumined being. Pretty much, I think it's taken from the idea of Buddhist enlightenment. So they're trying to erase the kind of the points of conflict of humanity. So race, gender, national identity. These are identities similar to the Buddhist monk would shed his identity when he becomes ordained. It's a kind of a rewriting of identity into this modern person that we get kind of glimpses of through the human potential movement. I think is quite a powerful conduit of Buddhist information that's then packaged in a kind of way that helps people in modern day settings without really telling people where the origin of the information's coming from. I think there's potentially a kind of corruption and lineage happening at that point, to get into it on a deeper level, that perhaps a lot of the stuff of trying to manufacture society is seems to be going wrong and is being rejected wholesale by the populations. This globalist movement has gone wrong on many levels, I believe. And I think there's a corruption in trying to apply politics to the spiritualities, to Buddhism, that if you kind of perverse the lineage of these things, then it can kind of create dangerous conditions. And I think that's perhaps one of the areas I'm going to be looking at afterwards, is this ghost in the machine that we've got in modern day politics can be traced to this group. And I think it needs to be, for us to evolve, I think we need to discuss this. Personally, I think it's an important thing to get over our history, because much of history is being obscured to hide the fact that we are kind of a fascist system in this kind of, in a very similar sense to the Nazi system, that they kind of used this use of mythology and psychological warfare to bring disparate groups together under a unified message of, we need to kind of have this moral supremacy that we're now under. It's not a racial supremacy. The woke culture's forming into a mythology of just this anti-white movement. So I think what we're looking at is the kind of mechanics of that, really. And that's what the third film will get into in a bit more detail.
Mm. Yeah, I think that the way that we're always played on opposites, like creating a like an extreme woke left ethos on the one hand, creates a very predictive backlash, which then results in a capture also, which we see this new Templarism emerging very loudly right on the right, which is kind of this it smells of the type of occult fascism that's being rehabilitated that we saw back in the 30s and 40s. That's also kind of co-emerging with the extreme absurdity of the woke left just being what it is. So you got this sort of dual
that's
thing.
a good one.
Yeah, that's maybe
Well,
that'll
that's
play
why
out.
that's why I personally said I don't hold any animus against Maurice Strong or any of these, or even David Rockefeller, because I think we're kind of shadow boxing in many ways. And if somebody gave me the opportunity, I might choose, like Lawrence Rockefeller, to fund someone like yourself and to shoot for the stars. So there is this kind of, this strange, what you're saying, this abyss, that if you start to come at it with an intention of attacking someone or an idea, that you really kind of end up seeing a wall of mirrors. So it's kind of trying to navigate past that. But what you're saying about the rise on the right, I'm aware of it, but I'm seeing the right really are predictably being gamed into a situation that's really against their own interest. And I think hopefully part of the motivation of making this is for them to kind of see the bigger picture of how we might be being put into a repeat pattern of history.
Yeah, that's good. I'll say before I open up to some dialogue with the audience, the thing that got me, because I was really deep into the New Age about 20 years ago when I was beginning to wake up and trying to refocus my mind's eye on how to think about the world from the standpoint of the realization that conspiracies, very bad ones, playing a big role in hurting my society, and it's very troubling, and it's difficult to adjust the eyes to that paradigm. And early on, I fell into some theosophical ufology type of wrappings. But I remember what got me though to sort of begin to snap out of it was when I found myself arguing, and I felt maybe a little overly certain of my position, but I remember arguing with somebody who was a political activist at the time, trying to propose all of these ideas for resisting empire, helping Africa, building projects to, green the Sahara. And I was like, I was on the wrong side of the debate, and I was actually trying to somehow persuade this person that maybe these people who have been living in squalor under empire with high infant mortality and death, that like normalized death in so much of the world, maybe they are just learning karmic lessons. It's all needed. We shouldn't do anything because it's just karmic lessons that they have to learn by being born into the crappy situations that they're in because of bad things that they did in previous lives. And I had to, I kind of had to stop. It stopped me listening to myself, kind of began to repulse me. And I was like, wait a minute, how far have where did I misstep in this? Like, how am I defending empire and the idea of not doing anything to help people in need? And I realized, oh, they got me. And I had to sort of like go into a bit of a soul searching reevaluation of some of what I had taken in at that moment. But I think that that's also one of those aspects because there might be like healthy approaches to thinking about karma and reincarnation that are undoubtedly healthy that don't result in people making the type of conclusions I made. But I made those, and those are really out there. I don't know if there's anything you want to say to that before you open for questions.
Sure. Yeah, I think the Buddhist aspect is they train themselves on a pure lineage of direct descendancy through Buddhas through the monk lineage. They really kind of say that's an important to stay on that path because you kind of can put yourself in danger. I never understood what they meant by that danger, but I think these powerful thoughts and can be used for negative. But even beyond that, I would say maybe history that we look at theosophy as a kind of perhaps a negative at the moment, but where we go in history next, we might think that theosophy is not so much a negative. Maybe the answer lies with theosophy. Maybe the despiritualization of the UN. I know I'm being controversial here. I'm just playing devil's advocate, but maybe the despiritualization of the UN was the fault, is where it all went wrong. So it's an opposite to what I perhaps think, but I'm keeping it open as a possibility. Because I think Kofi Annan went through a conscious despiritualization of the United Nations. I think Constance Cumby caused a kind of that despiritualization. She was really a prominent figure in the 80s. And it was after Robert Mueller's departing that I think they got rid of a lot of the theosophical language because they didn't want people relating it to the Nazi party, because theosophy played an important part of their ideology also. But that's more for film 3.
Yeah, it's a good little teaser. Yeah. Kelly, I've seen you've been waiting there for a while. Kelly, you got a question or a thought?
Yeah, I got a question thought. Yeah, when I was like young, I got into Madame Blavatsky there. I ended up buying her book, and I read a lot about that. I got into it. Why did I do that back then? I was just searching for something, like something different, and I got involved, all kinds of religions, from like Indian, Buddhism, Chinese, whatever. I think so. Like even now, I still kind of think that way. Like I'm not opposed to some kind of universal religion. It just seems like I wonder what would happen if this idea was allowed to happen organically without these elites that are dishonest, that seem to be I don't know, just taking a good idea and like screwing it up somehow. I guess I think you kind of agree with that somewhat. No.
Absolutely. I think the social engineering is really, especially during COVID when we really all got to experience it, was just not the way forward. And I think that kind of the social engineering that Lawrence Rockefeller was doing, I think, if you try and direct people's will against their will, I think there's some kind of karmic payoff in that. So it's, and me also, I very much embraced Buddhism, Earth in the Balance. I think it was Al Gore's book. Even Maurice Strong's articles at the time I was publishing on my website as a supporter of this world. And I think somewhere along the line, it's gone off the rails, probably from the moment, probably from the very idea on the outset it went wrong, but perhaps it went wrong after Robert Mueller and these other people got involved. There's a piece that you haven't seen yet of Hannah Strong talking about how she how Maurice gave Klaus his first money and first introductions that created the World Economic Forum. And she then later ended up calling them all assholes, basically. How ego has really corrupted the people at the top. She's talking about Larry Fink. It's a good little article. It's a good little interview. And yeah, so I think we need to analyze this and work out where it went wrong, if it was from the beginning or whether it's new generations taking it over without the skills and with all the kind of power that they've inherited. There's some kind of, so it's going wrong somewhere, but that's really I think the task is to work out where, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I think sometimes it's this idea of getting into the mindset, like H.G. Wells, right? You brought him up in your presentation. He's the inventor of the modern board game. Little Wars was the first like sort of modern board game.
Right.
And people treat that like as a cute little factoid. But if you think about like how he was thinking about it, his idea was to get them small, get kids into a state where they are thinking about themselves winning against others, right? In a sort of zero sum or in a game theory kind of idea. That's game theory emerges out of the idea of gaming the world or whatever situation you find yourself operating within, with the idea that you have opponents that must be defeated, a limited amount of sort of energy to go around, certain rules to follow, or maybe break if you're good at it, in order to win and defeat the weak. And if you can make it fun, you could you can really condition people's mental filter on how they're going to situate their own identity, how they think about problem solving or adapting to artificial problems that might be created for them by people that H.G. Wells is working with. But I think that whole idea of like thinking of humanity as something, or even as religions and spirituality, as something to game by a priest class and program. As soon as you get into that mindset, you're out of whack with God's law, like whatever it is. So I think just the fact that all of humanity, regardless of what sort of culture you're evaluating, all seems to have these attributes of wanting the best for their kids, wanting to prefer truth over lies, having an aspiration for dignity over humiliation and degradation. So you've got these attributes, which when they are expressed in a healthy way, the religious colorings, whatever the particular religious myths, the sacred stories are, tend to be more ennobled, tend to advance those outcomes. And whenever you have ignorance and empire, pulling the strings or pushing the influence of whatever, whether it's Islam or Christianity or Judaism or Hinduism, the opposite happens. The myths become something that enmeshes us ever more into ignorance, into the shadows of the cave. So, and it pulls us more and more away from peace and justice and happiness and all of the good things we want of religion and life in general, right? So it seems like in both directions you have like an idea of sort of oneness, one of which respects people's differences, but yet cherishes what makes us the same in a divine and good way, and the other one, the sort of theosophical orientation of the Neoplatonics and the Rosicrucians, seems to want to oneness us into the cave, so that we just take on sort of a more undifferentiated blah, the night where all cows are black kind of thing.
Yeah, I think Alice Bailey uses the word mind control. She calls meditation mind control. Hannah Strong's mother was a social warfare operative for World War II. Lawrence Rockefeller, obviously the OSS, were all Rockefeller scientists working on MK Ultra. That this kind of, so what I think, and just to back up what you're saying, this social engineering and playing of God, trying to direct the will of others, seems to be a losing strategy. That if you try and do that, they say that karma comes back on you twicefold, people say. There seems to be that kind of, the more they try and kettle us into position, the more that we resist. I think if they did allow society to happen in an anarchistic way, perhaps, then this theosophical world might kind of blossom in the way that it was intended without the social engineering. Another point is that Buddhism rests on the idea of enlightenment, individual enlightenment. The twist that Blavatsky put was that nations become enlightened, that it's a kind of group synthesis, not an individual synthesis. So I think that's kind of a problem in their thinking. I'm trying to problem solve for them of where they've gone wrong and how they should have done it. I'm
I see what
obviously
you're doing. I
not
see what you're doing. Yeah, you
the ideas,
want
but
to
I'm
give a little
trying
bit
to
of
game
space.
it. Yeah.
It's very, very virtuous of you to try to help them out a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, Chris, and then Jean-Sébastien. Chris, go first.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, great. That was a terrific synopsis of I don't know, the past 100 and some years. But yeah, I was listening to Norman Vincent Peale last week, like old YouTube videos of Norman Vincent Peale, and he's got a lot of good stuff, and he sounds like George C. Scott, and he's really personable. He's great, and then it becomes the secret, it becomes the power. I mean, power. It degrades to this point, but going back to Francis Bacon, it does seem like somebody had this quote that I can't remember, but it was like, it's not that the scientific revolution was was all bad, but it had foundations, and they didn't tell us what the foundations were. They had these hidden foundations that were occulted, and they were only for the elite. And but I don't know. It's so much that we're swimming in this stuff that we can't see it. I was Eileen Gu, the Olympic gold medalist, was talking about her neuroplasticity. That's an idea that comes from like damage, but people have adopted it to be an outlook on life, so you can envision yourself, and it works. But so much of this is it just that our elites have always been bad, and they never had is what we really need is like oligarchs that don't have bad intentions. I mean, I don't know what it comes down to. I sympathize with what you're trying to syncretize or whatever to your generosity, but God, it's so much of our think. It's so much of who we are. It's almost like we have to go back to, I don't know. They're good, like Rudolf Steiner. He had the same idea, this raising the Christ consciousness would come, but perhaps the problem is the power behind the thinkers, just like think tanks or anything else, I guess. I'm babbling, but thanks, Jamie.
No, that's good. That's good. I think you're right. Let me just check. Yeah. I just think I'm feeling a bit generous today. but I'm also trying to think in the future, kind of game of just this reverse engineering was their intention bad? I mean, call me out now let's just play devil's advocate, but if they wanted to create a kind of on the surface of what they were doing, I can see the method in the madness. It's gone wrong, but I can see that this kind of concentration of power that these Rockefeller brothers all kind of came of age with this amount of money to spend. That's kind of where I think maybe the problem happened, that it was just too much power concentrated in too few hands that kind of created this kind of hack of humanity, which is what Lawrence was doing. So yeah, that's my thinking at the moment.
Yeah,
I mean, if it's all social engineering for domination and it's pure evil of what the backstory beyond this kind of veneer of the United Nations, if it's pure evil intention, then yeah, then it's a different story, isn't it? Anyway,
can I add a few thoughts to what you just said?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think depends really in the real world. I've been trying to learn over the years, diplomatic language and figure out like what can people handle in a specific context of where they're at in order to find like, okay, well, what's good within them that I can help to amplify. And maybe at different times, you want to pick and choose your battles. They might have like 8 or 9 different fallacies, but there's a genuine goodness, and you're like, okay, that goodness is what I want to try to speak to at this moment. And I'm not going to bring up all of these other elements that I have a problem with, or that I've discerned to be problematic in their opinions about things. And other times, under certain circumstances, you're in an environment where somebody's an outright liar, deceiving for the intention of doing damage. And you're like, okay, got to take on a different modality, got to like call something out and be a little bit sharper there, and maybe get in an uncomfortable, debate or fight, and all of these things. So I think we're in a sort of safe space to use the woke language here, overall. But I think that when you look at the origins of Blavatsky's thinking, like her identity, what formed her early on, since she's one of the key figures, right, to set this chain of events and this movement into place. Number one, her mother and her grandfather are both key, because her grandfather is one of the leaders of the Rite of Strict Observance, this Rosicrucian infiltration into the Russian aristocracy. Her mother was the translator of Bulwer-Lytton's works like Zanoni into Russian. And she herself was part of the exact same rites, the initiatory rites that Bulwer-Lytton had set up as well, including the rite of Memphis Misraim. So I think, and on top of that, when I add another data, like a data point to the fact that it doesn't seem like she read or wrote her own thoughts. Most everything that she did was sort of a hodgepodge of other people's occult writings that she sort of like retooled into her own secret doctrine. It seems like it was kind of intentionally toxic from the get-go, it seems. That being said, there's definitely there's good people like Henry Wallace, whom I like. There's good people who have found themselves very much influenced by Theosophy, and at different times did good things. They always had sort of a tendency to fall for traps, like a lack of ability to recognize a trap set for them, and they would often be predictably fools in moments where they needed to be smarter. So that's part of just one of the aspects, that I've noticed, including followers of other Rosicrucians like Steiner, who is a self-professed Rosicrucian. A lot of good Steinerites like that I know, right? They're good people. There seems to be a tendency to not see the nature of the operation. The UN as well is something which has something good within it. But then there's this other thing. Like there's definitely the idea, the principles of the charter of pushing for world peace. That's good, and respecting national sovereignty. That seems to be pretty good. But then there's this other thing that's been infused into it, which it's important to, I guess, differentiate. How do you sort of dissipate this cancer and amplify what's useful about it? Which I guess could apply to anything in life that we're trying to interact with as an individual or as an institution, right? So there's just those.
Do you think Blavatsky went to Tibet?
I suspect she was lying. She told a lot of tall tales. Like whether it was the language of Dizian or whatever it was that she pulled out, this cryptic language, which turns out to be kind of just completely made up, or just her using just magic tricks to make appear letters from the ascended masters that she would just have appear in seances and stuff, which were proven to be just magic tricks, which were all designed to tell her followers to mop the floor harder because Utumi is disappointed that they're not following her desires to get served breakfast in bed more often. So no, she seems like a bit of a scam artist.
See, that just throws everything into just complete if the world is based on these theosophical ideas that's a psyop in the first place is kind of pretty much where you'd come from, isn't it? That it's been written by the powers that be. I don't know what's your thoughts on that? If she isn't legit, which I don't think she's ever been legit, but you know, are we really looking at a kind of civilization based on a lie?
I think that, yeah, I think her movement was designed to overthrow the conventional religious institutions of the 19th century, or after the U.S. Civil War, which is why it was also unveiled in the United States first before it was spread more globally. But I think the Civil War, the victory of the Union in the Civil War was a big trigger. If that hadn't happened, I don't think Theosophy would have been created in the form that it took. I think it was created because something else was spreading internationally out of the American experience, out of the Civil War, that was adopting an idea that all human beings are created divine, but that comes with a certain type of moral ethos that has to be respected, along with these big projects that were being built in Russia and Japan and India and China, and everybody who was admiring what the US example had been. I think that was sort of the healthy philosophical, moral culture that was coming into being that had to be disrupted with. I think the Theosophists kind of pulled that off in the way that they did it.
And the Promethean action people would call it the the economic system that Trump is trying to enact now. Is that was Blavatsky brought in to target that system?
Yeah, yeah. Although I have severe doubts that Trump is doing it authentically. I think he's probably pushing a Delphic version of that otherwise very true and good thing. But yeah, that's what you're thinking about. Yeah.
Wow. So Blavatsky was a kind of operative of the Rosicrucian order, perhaps.
Yeah, yeah. That's what my evidence is taking me to. Yeah.
Wow. That's cool. It's good to know. It's good to hear the backstory. I've very much focused on this UN story because it's a way to try and kind of appeal to people who are new to politics and trying for them to understand it without blowing their minds out. Which is my worry about part 3 of talking about the Aryan aspect is going to discredit the first 2 factual films that are all biographical, and then I'm going to go and mention the part that I think is a psyop. People's ideas of fascism or not Nazism, I should say, are so. It's a no-go zone, isn't it? And I feel kind of stupid to even go there, perhaps, but I think it needs to be spoken about.
I do too. Yeah, we'll talk. We'll share some notes about that. It's very important.
Brilliant.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm actually I'm working. Cynthia and I are working with Jason Dahl right now on a film in production called Black Sun Rising on esoteric Nazism, past and present. So I'm sure that what you're doing, what I'm doing, are going to have some interesting overlaps in some fun ways. So we'll share notes.
Well, I definitely I like the religious aspect. I can get into the theocratical side, I suppose, quite deeply. That's my enjoyment in the subject for sure.
You're not Sebastian. You've been waiting for a while, my man. Go for it.
Okay, I got a comment on 3 parts. I try to do this fast. And Jamie, I also really love the religious part of all behind HPB and all. And I've been a fan, big fan back then. I read a lot of them, from the Luciferus Trust to her book. I got it in my shelf. So first, I think that money poisons the well. I mean, where you wondered if they had a good intent at first or all along or at the end, I do believe that the family of HPB brought with the money poison in the well. But at first, there's a big chance that everything she taught was based on something real from a past belief, and that had some good virtue in it. Where I would like to go on the part 2 is Little question for Matt. Would you think that social engineering that we've mentioned on that case with HPB is only something from recent era or was omniscient all along humanity?
There's always been social engineers.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. So that's the third part I'm going in. I'll do the devil advocate myself if I can. We focused on the word karma, but we never mentioned the word dharma. Dharma is like the canon, is like the big law. Everything is in it. And karma is the ergon, is the way the student will choose a path to go toward Dharma or against Dharma. That's what Elena was teaching, like any other religious beliefs try to teach to their interns. So when we look at it from the outside, we see the corruption, we see the lie, and we see the fake. That is real because money poisons the well. But if we were in the inside, how about all those spiritism science will be pedagogical teachings for their own student, not for the outside. The lie is made in purpose to show to our zealots how we can manipulate people and why it's important to follow the truth. So the Dharma teaching will stay behind, and we only focus on the karma teaching, seeing bad, seeing cycle life that defies reincarnation and other such thing. And where I want to go with this is when I say social engineering always was omniscient, I think that in the past, Buddhism, I do appreciate Buddhism, but they come from Hinduism, that come from Confucianism, that comes from Vedic. And I think that the transformation of the teaching between karma and dharma, that profound link that make all the wisdom in it, has been torn apart. So to end with this, I'd say that what corrupts at first is the money, but what corrupts at the end is what we lose in the process. Over time, some wise information are getting lost and replaced by filling. Those guys at top, those elites, they fill the hole with ritual they invent, as long as it capitalize to bring more money, since they put money in. That's where money corrupts the world. I got a metaphor for this. One last thing. It's a tree. Every tree grows from a seed. A seed can only bloom if it is loved. And when it is loved, if the love is enough, the tree can be tall. And when it's tall, it casts shadows on the world. Yeah.
I like it. I like it. Wow. Lots of kind of, lot to go in there, isn't it? I have a friend who's an ordained monk. We started the same Buddhist school together when in our 20s, and I went one direction and he went into the monastery life. And it's they believe they have a pure lineage in their tradition. So I think maybe the pure lineage does exist still. So because I've always looked at it from a perspective of this is a corrupt lineage of information which is attacking some kind of demonic entities as they are trying to basically use karma for political will and creating backlashes, which I think we see in this reverse polarization where the more they try and capture us. It's like herding cats. We're not complying with any of their will, even if it's a good intention, like the 17 sustainable goals can be seen as good, but no one's having any of it. So yeah, they've got some sorting out to do, haven't they? Was there anything else from what you said that I've missed there that could?
Only the karma and dharma. Why would you think, if you got a friend in Buddhism, that dharma has been left aside and over time they all push forward the karma, and the karma, but they skip.
I'm not 100% sure if my understanding of dharma was the Lamrim teachings. It's been 20 years since I was studying Buddhism, but the kind of Dharma I'm wondering if you have a theosophical interpretation of karma and I have a different understanding of it because maybe we're having that kind of moment where we see Blavatsky twisting or changing. And so my understanding of Dharma was that is the kind of teachings, that the Lamrim, the words are the Dharma, but I might not have a deep enough understanding of it.
See how Dharma is important, and we know a few about it over the time.
Could you define your idea of Dharma, Jean-Sébastien?
What?
Could you define your concept of Dharma? Could you define it?
For me, Dharma is the logos, the higher ground, the logos. In the Hellenist way, we got argon and ergon. Ergon is doing the right thing to get the right behavior, and argon is doing the wrong thing. So Dharma is where you go when you do one or the other. So it's the whole. It's the whole. It's logos. That's how I see Dharma over time. After
that's brilliant. We're already deep into it. This is fantastic.
Well, I got one. So I got one definition online here from Britannica saying Dharma's teachings offer practical guidance to end suffering through the pursuit of wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline, vectoring around the study of the Four Noble Truths and the Noble Eightfold Path of right view, intention, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration. Sounds pretty good. I think,
Dharma is good. Dharma is good, but over time, if we see Dharma as a good thing, like it is given, we associate karma as a bad thing, while karma is the way to get to that good thing. That's what I think is the social engineering of 1,600 years ago, around that time.
I think we need to carry on this conversation and this is the beginnings of the conversation, isn't it?
I'm always there.
Brilliant.
Well, thank you for your attention and your answer, by the way.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
Yeah, there's definitely some very extremely important concepts that you've introduced and are continuing to introduce that people need to chew on. And if they don't go there, they will not be equipped to understand the world that they're living in, let alone interfacing with it in any constructive manner. So I highly appreciate what you've done, what you're continuing to do. And I'm very much curious to see how episode 3 manifests. So you and I are going to have some more conversation on the side in the days and weeks going ahead. When do you think that are you going to reveal all 3 of these episodes at the same time, or are you going to be putting them out, like stagger them out over the coming weeks and months ahead?
It's a good question. Part of me was thinking about just doing it in one film today. But then previously to that, I thought, shall I do it in 10-minute sections and then just begin it as an ongoing series of films? Because I don't think the story will never stop, hopefully, or there's a good few films to be had out of the material that's collected so far. And then I think it will. So I'm undecided and open to, maybe I'll do both. I think I'll probably do an hour version and then upload 10-minute sections as well, just to try and get into the algorithmic life, because none of my social media is kind of getting any traction yet. So if I upload a film that I've taken 3 years to edit, it'll just get no views at the moment. So yeah, watch this space. But my Twitter, maybe if you could put my socials underneath the video, or there's probably a bit. So yeah, we can kind of update, but I'm going to try and use this bit of energy around the subject to finish it. I really want to finish them. I was editing those ones last summer, so it's kind of, I've had a bit more time to get distance from it, which I like to try and do. I don't like to try and rush these things because I want to be sure I'm not messing up too horrifically. When dealing with delicate subjects, I mean, and there's a lot of people that will perhaps be upset of me going into the more delicate aspects of this. if it's not dealt with correctly and fairly, which I want to try and do.
Well, they say, it's maybe an oft misused quote, but to make an omelet, you do have to break a few eggshells. So it's
Yeah.
okay. All right. I know that Lisa had a question or at least an observation, which I'll just read it because I know that our time is limited and we do have to wrap it up. But Lisa just wanted to share something as an observation where she wrote, "The pure blood idea shows up in the Harry Potter novels. It also shows up in the Canadian Aboriginal tribes, not just Canadian, by the way. That is one reason why BC has signed over the property rights of Vancouver's Lower Mainland to the Musqueam Indian Band. Vancouverites have no idea that they've just lost the rights to their homes and will have to pay a user fee to these tribes." I mean, that's another thing that's, the consequence of Maurice Strong, Glenn Strong and what they've been doing by weaponizing, it's not just the Western civilization that they've been trying to mess with and transform. It's also the native traditions and cultures that they've also been trying to muck with, transform, and weaponize to get us all to. Yep.
Could we end on you giving us a kind of insight into the shitty stuff that he's done? Because I've kind of given him this one love treatment all evening. I understand that he blocked nuclear development.
Oh, Strong? Yeah. Well, let's do a follow-up thing. I think you and I are going to talk tomorrow, and he has a little bit of an interview just on Maurice Strong. So we'll leave that open there for really just taking some shots at some of the more nefarious aspects of Strong's career. So yeah, there's also somebody just wrote saying Richard Olafson says, "I went to a Tibetan institute when I was 20. Okay, you'll tell later. Okay, I should have just read that first. Okay. All right, Bimmy, thank you so much for sharing your time, your wisdom, your great work. Looking forward to both watching and sharing your videos as they come out. I'm sure everybody is too. And go to the description box under this video for those watching this on YouTube and click on links. Give Jamie a follow, share his stuff on social media. And till next week, everybody, I think Jerry is going to be doing something perhaps. Am I right, Jerry? Is next week Chaucer?
Yes, next week I'll be doing Geoffrey Chaucer's Canterbury Tales and his fight against the Romantics and the Crusades.
Ooh, that's good. That's good. All right. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Jamie, and thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thank you. Awesome crew.
Cheerio.